Today we are making the iconic New York chopped cheese but vegan. Chopped up burger meat, melty American cheese, and fried onions make for one of the most perfect sandwiches ever, and it's been a while since I've made one of these and I was craving it badly, so I decided to update my recipe for it and also test out my tofu ground beef versus Impossible meat as well to see which is a better option, so let's get into it. And now for the tofu ground beef, we're going to want to get some super firm tofu, the kind that doesn't need to be pressed. You can use extra firm, but it's going to need to be pressed and cooked longer. And to get our tofu nice and meaty, we need to whip up a meaty marinade. And I'm going to start off with 2 teaspoons of some vegan beef bouillon, but you can use veggie if you can't find this stuff. And normally I would add in some soy sauce here, but we're going to be seasoning this later with some adobo and sazon, so let's skip the soy sauce for now. After that, we're going to do 2 tablespoons of steak sauce, and yes, A1 is vegan, but use any steak sauce you like. Next is 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke, 2 teaspoons of Gravy Master or vegan Worcestershire sauce, a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. Then a 1/4 cup of neutral oil and a 1/4 cup of water. Optional but recommended is 2 tablespoons of tomato paste and 2 tablespoons of blackstrap molasses. Whisk that up and that is our meaty marinade. For the tofu, we just need to crumble it up into a bowl, get it as fine as you like, but keep in mind we can always chop it up later when we cook it on the griddle. And once you have it crumbled up to a medium or small grind, let's pour over the meaty marinade and get the tofu all nice and coated in it. And once our tofu is looking good, let's get a parchment-lined baking sheet and spread the tofu out into a single layer. You're probably going to need 2 baking sheets as I did. We're going to go ahead and add those to a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 30 to 40 minutes to bake, flipping halfway through. And this is going to dry out the tofu and make it nice and chewy and meaty. After the tofu is cooked down and looking something like this, what we want to do next is add it to a skillet with about 2 cups of water. And we're just going to bring this to a simmer and let that liquid reduce. And you might be asking, what the heck? We just baked them. Why are we drowning them in water? Well, baking gives us a better texture, but it does dry them out. Reducing in water will keep that texture, but the reduction will help them get nice and juicy. And it's also going to redistribute the seasoning throughout the tofu as well. And believe me, the end result is so worth it. This tofu is meaty, savory, chewy, and juicy, and you can make a ton for more sandwiches or use it in other ground beef recipes, so definitely go for it if you can. And now for the Impossible, I tested out using some frozen patties on a cast iron as well as some thawed patties on a non-stick, but more on that in a bit. Let's get the rest of the components sorted out. First, let's talk bread. You're going to want to get some kind of hoagie roll, something soft on the inside with a slightly crusty exterior. I wouldn't go for a baguette as that will be too tough, but a nice sturdy French roll or even dare I say an Amorosa roll would work fine. Some places even use Kaiser rolls as well. For the veggies, we're just going to slice up some onion. I like to do mine pole to pole, and then we're just going to fry those along with the burgers when the time comes. And for the lettuce, it's got to be thinly sliced iceberg. Slice it as thin as you can without slicing your fingers off, of course. Tomatoes are in season, so get a nice juicy one and slice it not too thin and not too thick, unlike me who did both. For condiments, it's mayo and ketchup. That's it. No fancy stuff, bub. And then for one of the most important parts, the seasoning. It seems like either adobo or sazon is used traditionally, but then I thought, why not both? And if you can't find these and you're wondering if you can make these seasoning blends at home, the answer is yes. For sazon, just get 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon of MSG, a half teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of annatto, which is optional but for color, and then 1 teaspoon of cumin. That is it. Just blend that up in a spice or coffee grinder and you've got some quick and easy homemade sazon. For the adobo, you just need 3 tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon of oregano, 1.5 tablespoons of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon onion powder, a teaspoon turmeric, and a teaspoon of cumin. Also 1 tablespoon of black pepper, which I ran out of. Again, blend that up as well, and that is your quick and easy adobo seasoning. Both of these are very salty and flavorful, so a little goes a long way. So now that we have everything, let's get to chopping. First up is the frozen Impossible patties on a cast iron. In a lot of videos I watch, it seems like the bodegas use frozen patties, so I wanted to try that out. Unfortunately, this is a new skillet and the seasoning on it isn't the greatest, so I did get some stickage. I also tested them with thawed patties and a non-stick, and that worked out great too, so don't sweat it if you don't have a cast iron or carbon steel griddle. Just make sure you don't use metal utensils to chop it up if you go with non-stick. Use a silicone spatula or something like that. Other than that, it's basically the same. But back on the cast iron, we're going to give them a flip, add in some onions and some adobo and sazon, and then we'll go ahead and give them a titular chopping, and basically we just need to chop them up as fine as we'd like and toss them around, and once the meat is cooked through and the onions are softened, we're gonna line it up into a kind of rectangular meat log shape. And then we'll lay down 2 pieces of vegan American cheese, add some water and cover to steam and melt the cheese like so, and then we'll go ahead and chop the cheese as you please, and once it's looking something like that, we are ready to assemble our sandwich. Now you can toast your roll if you like, but either way you want to hollow it out a bit so we will have maximum room for our cheesy meat and filling. And then we're gonna give it a squirt of mayo and ketchup, of course, lay down our cheesy meat, some tomatoes, a little salt and pepper, our lettuce, and then we're gonna do our best to close this thing up. And I really recommend rolling this thing up in some paper if you can. Not only is it more traditional experience, but it's just functionally way easier to make sure that the sandwich ends up in your mouth and not on your lap. Then we're gonna give it a cut and see the cross section. It's not bad, but I have some better ones coming up. And let's do a taste test, and I mean, I don't know what to say. It really is just one of the best sandwiches ever invented. People like to compare it to a cheesesteak, but it's honestly way different to me. It's all the flavors of a burger, but in a tighter and more compact and convenient package. It's just perfect for a quick, delicious meal on the go. Okay, now we gotta see how the tofu ground beef stacks up against the Impossible, and we're gonna cook it pretty much the same, except it's really kind of pre-chopped, which is nice since it takes less time to cook. Oh, and I'm making this one for my wife, so no onions, but we're gonna season it with the Sazon and the Adobo, of course. After that, it's pretty much the same thing. Melted cheese, chop it up and serve it on a roll with the ketchup, mayo, lettuce, and tomato. Wrap that baby up, give it a cross section, and now it's time to dig in. And honestly, I think the tofu version is way better. Even without the onions, the tofu meat just has way more flavor than the Impossible. Even with all that seasoning, it actually tastes more beefy if that's possible. It's also cheaper and more accessible, though obviously takes more time to prepare. But if you have the time and ingredients, I would highly suggest the tofu ground beef over the Impossible if you can. And so if you've never tried this sandwich before, or if you're a vegan in New York and you miss it, I highly encourage you to make this ASAP. It truly is one of the most simple and delicious sandwiches in existence. And if you do want to see a tofu cheesesteak, check out this recipe right here. And until then, I'll see you all next time.